Welcome to Racing Girls Rock podcast presented by the Women's Motorsports Network. I'm Melinda Russell, the founder and CEO. I also founded the International Women's Motorsports Association and the Women's Motorsports Network News online magazine. Today's episode is brought to you by our official travel planner, Brittany Heisinger. Brittany specializes in Disney trips, but can book any trip, anywhere you want to go, from Hawaii to Houston, Alaska to Australia, or anywhere in between. Last year, she helped over 100 families plan magical vacations to Universal Studios, Disneyland and Disney World, Mount Rushmore, Las Vegas, Cabo, Hawaii, Aruba, and Iceland, to name a few. In just her first year since joining the Smart Moms Travel Group, she's won the Rising Star Award, the Top Paid Agent Award, and won a rewards trip. She hit her sales goal, joined Team Fantasyland at her agency, became a Walt Disney World pass holder and Magic Key holder, and more importantly, has made lifelong friends. You can connect to Brittany on Instagram at Travel with Zing or give her a call at 602-291-5144. Check out the show notes for more information and tell her Melinda sent you. And now it's time for this week's show.
Hello, everyone. This is Melinda Russell with Racing Girls Rock podcast, sponsored by the Women's Motorsports Network and the International Women's Motorsports Association. And today my guest is Amy Lerner. And Amy, welcome to the show. I'm so glad to have you with me today. And I want to start the show off by just asking you to tell us a little bit about yourself, your family, your pets, anything you're comfortable with sharing.
Sure. Thank you so much for having me. I suspect we're here not to talk about my dogs, but the fact that I am a race driver. I participate in cross-country rallies and am also a documentary filmmaker.
Okay, well, that's awesome. And do you mind sharing where you live?
Yep, not at all. I live in New Jersey. So not a lot of opportunities for off-roading in the half-hour radius of New York City, but it's a sport that gives me an amazing opportunity to travel to some really incredible places, which is another reason why I like it so much.
Well, let's just start right there. How did you get started? How did you get interested in rally and road racing, that kind of thing? And then just start from there and tell us about your adventures.
Yep. So my interest in motors and then motorsports started as soon as I was able to, scramble up into whatever Model A, Model T antique car my dad was working on and stick my hands on the steering wheel. And that was where I spent most of my young days out with him while he was working on whatever car he was working on and, pretending to drive until I was finally able to drive at like age 10, and then got interested in motorsports as a fan. Went to a Skip Barber racing school as an adult and was ready to start racing in their circuits and found out I was pregnant. I now have 2 kids. And when they were, like maybe 10 and 12, I read an article in the New York Times about this thing called the Rally Aisha des Gazelles, which takes place in Morocco. And it is a 9-day, all women's off-road, 100% off-road navigational rally. And something about it just captured my imagination. And I took my Kindle and I put it in front of my husband. I said, honey, I found my midlife crisis. What do you think? And he read the article and he looked at me a little funny and he said, you know what, if that's something you want to do, it sounds cool. Why don't you go for it? So I invited my sister to come along as my navigator. And we went to Morocco and had so much fun. Started looking at other things to do. I went to Australia, raced a cross-country rally there, and it has led to other races and other rallies. Most recently, I was in Saudi Arabia for the second time at the Dakar Rally, where I competed in a 1982 Porsche 911 SC that was liveried as a tribute to the Porsche factory cars of the mid-'80s, driven by the legendary, drivers Jackie Ickx, Rene Metsch, and actually had a great surprise at the bivouac one day when Jackie Ickx turned up, and we had a great chat and a visit and, talked about cars. So that's really been my sort of history in the racing side of things.
So that's pretty interesting. Most people get started at a local track, and you went all the way to Morocco for your first event, first time to try it out. So that was more than just a little gamble, wasn't it? That was a big decision.
Yeah, it was a major endeavor. I had traveled, but never any place like Morocco. So just taking a trip there was a leap, and then something that I didn't know how to do was another big leap. I was fortunate that at our first training session, I got to meet a guy named Rod Hall, who, if you know off-roading at all, you know what a legendary figure he was and what an influence he had on so many people around the world. I had no idea who he was at the time. I just thought he was this, nice sort of self-deprecating, humble guy who, and I couldn't even honestly figure out, like, did he really know what he was doing? Because he was so humble when he taught and gave you such an opportunity to learn yourself, rather than just doing what someone tells you to do, that it was an incredible start to my rally and racing career.
Yeah, and that's awesome. God puts people in front of you that you need, and you certainly needed him, didn't you?
Yep, I sure did. And we actually ended up becoming friends, and he was a bit of a mentor of mine. And, fast forward 10 years, I ran into him in 2015 at the Off-Road Motorsports Hall of Fame awards dinner in Las Vegas, and we just got to chit-chatting, and that conversation turned into an idea that I had to make a documentary about his life and the couple years that were leading up to his 50th consecutive Baja 1000 race, which took place in 2017. And he was the only person who was at that first race in 1967, and every single edition of that race in the 51 years that transpired. And as Rod always liked to joke, everybody else graduated. And he just kept doing the same thing, which turned into a film that, as I said, I produced and co-directed, which is actually available now on Amazon and iTunes, called One More Win, which tells the story of Rod's racing, in the early days. And he, after we started filming, learned about some health issues that ended up becoming a significant factor in how he was going to get to Baja and whether he was even going to get to Baja for that 50th race.
Yeah, very interesting. I'm glad you mentioned that, because I think people will be interested in watching that for sure. Even no matter what kind of motorsports you're interested in, those are interesting stories to watch for sure.
Yeah, we were able to give a great bit of the history of the sport, and also, Rod's impact on it, and what I had originally planned to be a biography woven into some sort of current day racing, and this record that he was going to set turned into a story that I think will potentially have an impact on a lot of people because of the struggles that he faced at the end. And it became much more personal and much more about the man than about his career and what he went through at the finish.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I love that you had the opportunity to do that. And, in the days we live in, we take thousands of pictures and videos and things, but a lot of times, what do we do with them? They're buried on our phones, in our computers. But the fact that you took the time to put that all together and share it with other people is really a lasting impact of him for generations to come, which is really cool.
Yeah, thank you. That's what I'm hoping. I have to give a big thank you to Rod's wife, Donna Hall, because she had an idea from early on and was a saver of everything that had Rod's name on it. So she handed me boxes to go through with race programs and news stories and all kinds of incredible stuff that we were able to use in the film as archive to, bring a visual moment to these stories that Rod was telling.
That's amazing. So she, I'm a scrapbooker in my off times and crafter. And so I understand that some people save those kinds of things, and some people just don't see the value, and the fact that she saw the value in it.
Incredible.
It all came together, didn't it?
Such a gift. Yep.
Yeah, such a gift. So tell me about, I was thinking, so you called your sister up and you said, this is what I want to do. Will you go with me? What did she say?
I don't remember exactly, but I don't think it took her very long to say, sure, why not?
So she was the navigator.
Yep.
And you were the driver. And so how did that go? Do the two of you typically get along pretty well?
Yeah, it's harder and easier to go to an event like that. And the Gazelle Rally is 9 days with no electronics, no cell phones. You check your cell phones at the door, you check your computer. You don't get to use the in-car navigation. You have paper maps, you have compasses. And even if you have done it before, it's incredibly challenging. So the bonus of going with someone you're as close to as you are with a sister is that you guys have a communication ready and you understand each other. And you also know the signs of, okay, she's getting a little nervous, or I bet she needs a snack, or, you know, maybe we should stop for a minute and take a drink or stretch our legs. So that stuff's unspoken, but it is tougher because you do have such a close relationship that, you know, you bring everything with you, and the car is small and you're basically face to face with each other for 12 or 14 hours a day. And when you're not in the car with each other, you're sleeping in a tent together.
Right.
So it's a lot of togetherness, which is actually, you know, which is kind of a really cool thing to experience with someone.
Well, it really is. And as long as there's no big blow ups, you know, along the way somewhere. So did she have to learn a lot of things about I would think that the navigator would have a hard job if they weren't used to doing that kind of thing. So does she have a background in something that made her a good navigator, or how does that work?
Yeah, the driver is always the one that gets the shiny photos and the glory, but in a lot of events, the driver would not be able to do what they were able to do if the navigator or co-driver, depending on what kind of an event it is, was as good as they were. And she came into it not having done anything specifically like that before, but she knew basic map reading, and she also had studied geology. So she was incredible at looking at the squiggles at the map and going and, you know, pointing and saying, okay, this squiggle is that mountain. This squiggle is that mountain. And then all the way in the back, you can barely see this squiggle. And I look at it and it's hieroglyphics. I even after, you know, multiple times of that event, I cannot make the translation the way she could do like that from map to real world.
Yeah, because when my husband drives and I navigate, it works pretty well.
Yeah.
But everybody doesn't have that relationship, you know, and sometimes it can get a little tense, and we travel pretty well together. So
it's good.
Yeah, it's good. And it's good that you and your sister do as well. So you've been a lot of places. What was the favorite place that you went, where you went for a race?
Oh my gosh. There's a Wall Street saying you're only as good as your last trade, which translates into motorsports. You're only as good as your last race. So I kind of like to say my favorite race was you asked me now, my favorite race was the last one, and my next favorite is the one that's coming up. They've all been incredible. I actually just had a really amazing experience not competing at a rally in Saudi Arabia called the Rally Jameel, which just took place a few weeks ago. And that was the first all women's motorsport in history in Saudi Arabia, and the first time Saudi Arabian women had an opportunity to compete in an event like this. And it was pretty incredible to be on the sidelines working with a team of two journalists, Sue Mead and John Reddy, and also shooting some video and doing some interviews. So it was really, that was kind of an amazing experience to see the birth of something completely new for women who hadn't had an opportunity, even if they were inclined to do something like that in their own country. So it was pretty incredible. And the landscapes there are beyond belief. I mean, it's just such a beautiful, beautiful.
Is it really?
Spectacular. Yeah.
So what you did there, then where, like if I wanted to read about it or find, tell me about that. Where's that located that I could find that?
So it's the website, I believe, is just Rally Jameel, JAMEEL.com. Or if you just Google Rally Jameel, Sue Mead, and put together a tremendous amount of coverage in the US. So you'll be able to find a bunch of news articles about it. There actually were several American teams that came over to compete, as well as some women from some other countries. So it really, I think next year will be an even bigger global effort and an opportunity to go to a place. I mean, when I was there the first time at Dakar, we would go places and look and say, well, how many humans who aren't from this country have been here before? And the answer is only the guys that drove in front of you, not too many otherwise. And it's kind of a neat component to it.
Yeah, that's very cool. That would just, there's so many things happening that women are doing and that most people don't know anything about, like that. That doesn't make the national news. That doesn't make news really even in motorsports that much, unless you're just happen to run across that article somewhere. And so the fact that we're able to share that and talk about what those women are doing, that's pretty amazing for sure. So for somebody who doesn't understand or know that much about what what kind of race it is and how it works, why don't you explain that a little bit?
You mean something like the Rally Jamil?
Yes.
So that is similar to the Gazelle Rally in Morocco or the Rebelle Rally here in the United States, in that it is not a race for speed. It is a navigational rally with some components of what's called a regularity rally thrown into it, which means you need to get from point A to point B in a certain exact amount of time. And you're scored along the way based on not only do you get to the start to the finish at the same time, but are you at the right time 2 kilometers in, 4 kilometers in. So it's really challenging for the co-driver and challenging as well for the driver, because they're not driving on terrain they've ever seen. You don't see the course ahead of time. You will get a set of race notes in the morning, a road book, which they're called tulips, which are little instructions, which has, a couple of squiggles, a triangle, and some numbers on it. And the job of the co-driver is to interpret that and know that in 200 meters, we're going to make a left turn and we'll see a mountain on our right. And to translate those graphics on the road book into what's in front of the car so that they can guide the driver to do what they need to do and not only not get lost, but also make sure that if they're supposed to be keeping a certain speed, the speed is correct, warning about any dangers, anything like that to keep them moving and keeping them on pace to do what they need to do over the course of the day. So it's just a full day of that with different checkpoints in between. Some of it was in sand dunes, some of it was in rocks, lots of different kinds of terrain. Lots of easy ways to get lost, and you have to not only be able to follow the road book, but you have to problem solve. If you get lost, how do you figure out where you are? How do you get back? If you get stuck in the sand, how do you get unstuck? How do you get moving again? There's a lot of components to it. So it's not just get in the car and step on the throttle. It's complicated.
Yeah, I'm sitting here thinking, it takes a smart person to actually figure all that out, or somebody who has a lot of knowledge. Like I've been to the sand dunes in Michigan, which doesn't compare, but it's my only reference. And if you got stuck there, I understand how that would work, but getting stuck out where you were is a whole nother story. So how do you learn all those things? Just by doing and getting stuck and figuring it out? Or is there
a lot of it is just what the experience you have and how you manage it. But that said, every event pretty much will have some type of a training course you can go to. There's, general 4x4 skills. You can get those in a number of different schools around the country are great to have. There are people that do online navigation training, road book training, all that stuff. So, if someone's considering an event like that, learn as much as you can ahead of time, but know that even if you spent, a year training, you will still encounter things that you have to figure out in that moment.
Right, because you can never plan for everything.
Absolutely not. Nope.
Especially when you don't know what the course is going to be. Yeah, for sure. Yep. So have you gotten lost? How badly have you gotten lost or not?
Back in the Gazelle Rally, it's very easy to get lost, not badly lost. It can still happen even at the level of Dakar, the ultimate off-road motorsport event in the world, and very, very high level of competition. We had a situation where we were in a transit, which is the distance you travel between two competitive sections to get from the finish of one to the start of the next, and got lost in a town called Heil. And Sarah, missed a direction, and we somehow were on this network of highways and had no way to know to get back where we were. So I had the brilliant idea of, wait a minute, there was a huge mosque. We should be able to see that huge mosque. And the highway that we were on when we were ran right past the huge mosque. So we headed back towards the center of town, and we're, peering over buildings and looking, and finally we spotted the top of the huge mosque and got ourselves back to it in the direction we were going the first time. and picked up our pace again and got back on course. So it's problem solving like that. You have to figure out how to fix what you need to fix in situ, which is part of the fun.
Yeah, and you kind of have to be aware of your surroundings and take note of different landmarks or different things. And if you get lost, then that's how you found your way back. That's pretty interesting.
Exactly. Yeah. You've got a Sue Mead just shared with me a phrase that she actually learned. She said from Darren Skilton, GPS eyes.
Yeah,
Which
absolutely.
is exactly what I said. If you're looking around, paying attention, you're going to spot something that will help you get back on track if you get off of it.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, I'm fascinated with what you guys do, because I've never been able to be there in person, obviously, or to see it, and it wouldn't be something that probably spectators really come to, because there's really not anything to watch except maybe the start and the finish, right?
Right. Yep.
Or if you go through a town, maybe the people, maybe they're aware, maybe they're not. But I just think it would be so fun to be like the third person in the car and be the back, just like go along for the experience and not have any of the pressure of driving or navigating. That's what I would want to do. I would just want to ride in the back and enjoy the experience.
You need to get one of these rallies to create a ride along category.
I think so. I think
you just sit in the back and take it all in.
Yeah, you just pay a certain amount of money to be that third person.
Yeah.
And you can have no input. You have to be quiet. You can't help the team or whatever, but
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, I'd love to be the ride along. Kind of like I wanted to do we were at Mid Ohio for the motorcycle races. We used to go there all the time. And they go down the backstretch at 180 or whatever the crazy amount of speed is on a motorcycle. And one year when we were there, they were offering ride-alongs. You could ride on the back.
Yep.
And I kept hearing about it. And finally on Sunday, I said to my husband, I want to do that. He's like, go do it. And I'll be darned if it didn't, like, by the time I really said, okay, I'm going to go do it, it started to rain.
Oh.
And so I didn't get to do it. And so I always said, God was telling me, Melinda, you don't need to be doing that. So he rained out the rest of the race. But anyway, I know that sounds crazy, but it was like, I really would have enjoyed that. I love that.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think I would have loved it. So I would enjoy riding in the back seat and checking out what you do. So what do you love the most about it?
Aside from I like to drive fast, I would say the thing that I like about this particular type of motorsport, which is, rally, cross-country rally, navigational rally, is the mental input that you need. And the fact that you are not, driving someplace you saw before. You can't say, okay, here's this tree. So I know in 200 meters, I got to edge to the left a little bit because there's going to be a hole. And that way I can go faster. You've got to constantly process what you're taking in, what you're seeing, what you're hearing, and adapt how you're driving. So for me, that's super fun.
Yeah. And it's very challenging, isn't it?
Yeah. Yep.
And then I would think that when you're done, you feel very accomplished that you did it. Even if you were last,
yeah,
it doesn't matter. You finished, you did it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. To go back to Rod Hall's famous, to finish first, you must first finish. It's particularly apt in something like a cross-country rally where you've got multiple days of events. And in, Dakar and the Baja 1000, half the cars that start don't even finish. So just getting to the finish meant that you were better than half the entrants.
Right.
No small feat. It's quite hard to just finish one of these things, because an important component, which we didn't touch on yet, is knowing your vehicle and not hurting it, because that vehicle has got to make it for 2 weeks of abuse. So you have to know how far to push it. Even on a navigation rally, you've got to know how far you can push your car.
Okay, so let's talk about that. Where do you get your car? Do you own your car? How does that work? Do you have sponsors that help you pay to get your car ready? Talk about that.
Yep. So it's been different events over the years. I've had different sponsors. One of the early ones was American Expedition Vehicles. They built a Jeep for me that I used in Morocco at the Gazelle Rally twice. I have also competed in a FJ Cruiser, a SUV, no, sorry, a side-by-side, a Polaris at the Mint 400. I raced in a Polaris. One of the most fun / terrifying experiences that I had racing was at the Mint 400 when Shelby Hall asked me if I would like to drive with her. She was going to be racing Rod Hall's Baja 1000 overall winning Ford Bronco. And
very cool.
it was really cool, really fun. That Bronco is fast. It's hard. There's no suspension. It's not an easy ride at all. But the fact that, Rod trusted me and Shelby trusted me to take part of the driving duties was really pretty awesome.
Yeah, that is very awesome. Yeah, that says a lot about you without saying anything. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. So what's your favorite? Do you prefer to be the single driver and have a navigator, co-drive? Or would you ever want to just be the navigator? What would be your favorite?
For me, hands down, I would like the steering wheel. I like driving. I have not co-driven a speed event, a race. I did co-drive also with Shelby Hall driving at the Rebel Rally. And it was a very short notice. I didn't really have a chance to train much. I did okay, but I prefer the left seat. I would do it again, but I prefer the driving and I prefer, the stuff with a little more speed.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Sounds like you like to go fast.
Carefully.
So now when you talk about, so let's say you're at point A and you have to be at point B within a certain amount of time. What if you get there early? Is that a penalty? I mean, do you have to really monitor your speed?
Yeah, so the Dakar Classic, which is what I just competed in, is primarily a regularity rally, and it is off-road, and it is at speeds that are very suited to the terrain. So I learned that if you had a speed that was, a section that was going to be 45 kilometers, that means the terrain was going to be really bad. And if the section was going to be 100 kilometers, that means it's going to be easier. We're going to be able to go faster. So the speeds would change within a section, and there would be waypoints. And at each waypoint, you were given a time that you're supposed to be at that first waypoint. And if you're there, seconds early, seconds late, you're penalized. Okay. So you can catch up so that you finish at the exact time. But if you're off early or late at those waypoints, you do get penalized. So that's about, there was enough speed to make it interesting based on the terrain, but it's also about precision, which was a new component for me last year. And one that really, again, you'd think, okay, well, you're not just going super fast. It's got to be boring, but it was super, super hard and super interesting.
So if you're coming up to a waypoint and you're a little bit early, can you just stop and wait till it?
You can, in theory, but then you've got to speed up because there are also hidden waypoints. So you could have your time checked, not just at the road book note where there might be a waypoint, but it could be in the middle of a section. So you can't just speed up, stop 10 meters before it and be like, okay, I'm looking at the clock, tick, 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 tick. Okay, now go. Because maybe, 100 meters before that, you got clocked for being a minute fast.
Okay.
So it's really precision.
I figured there had to be something in place because what would stop you from doing that? Right. So that makes sense. Yeah. I'm learning a lot. Every time I talk to somebody that does this, I learn a lot because I really didn't know that much about it prior to meeting Sue Mead and some other people. And it's just really interesting to me. I just absolutely love it. So what's your next event? Where are you going next?
Not 100% yet, but I am looking into going to the Andalusia rally in Spain in June, which is put on by the same folks that run the Dakar. And it will be, if I do it in it'll be the speed rally, the main rally component of it. Yeah.
Okay. And when would that be?
That is the second week of June.
Okay. So it's coming up, not too far away.
Yeah. And for that one, the team that was my support for Dakar G Rally based in Belgium would probably just provide a vehicle. So I would just sort of arrive and drive.
Okay.
In that case.
All right. Sounds good. And then are there any bucket list ones that you really want to do someday?
I have to tell you, I have been really fortunate to be able to tick a lot of them off. One that still looks pretty incredible is the East African Safari Rally.
Oh, that
Which,
sounds awesome.
yes, is an event that Rod did back in the day when it was just a rally for the current era cars. And it was reinvigorated, I guess, a number of years ago, and it is now a vintage car rally. And it just looks spectacular. Lots of more muddy than the desert stuff, but looks really, really beautiful.
Oh, that sounds amazing to do something like that.
And that's in Kenya primarily.
Oh, yeah. Wow. Very cool. So, Amy, what have I not asked you about that we need to share with my listeners?
Oh my goodness. We've actually covered quite a lot of stuff. The only thing I always like to, sometimes people will ask me, well, gee, how do I do it? We touched on that a little bit. The other question that I frequently get, but not always, is, as a woman in motorsports, do you think this or that? And I would say that I have seen a change in the number of women in motorsports in the 12 years that I've been doing this. And I am so happy that I don't get to take home the women's trophy, the best woman driver, the fastest woman trophy just by showing up anymore. Had to work for it, which is awesome. And if you're, a woman or a man or anybody really, but a woman considering it, there's nothing in this type of motorsport that physically prevents a woman from doing it.
Yeah.
You can't be super weak and super tight, and, you have to be flexible. You have to have core strength because you're banging around for a long, long time.
Yeah.
You've got to lift a tire, that kind of stuff. But there's nothing that says that you can't do it just as well as anybody. There's no gender disparity or anything that I've seen in this sport. It's just the way it's been historically. And I think in another 10 years, it's going to look very different again.
Oh, it's for sure just changing. It's just changing almost daily. I mean, we see in, NASCAR or circle track racing, which is honestly what I cover a lot of because it's so popular here. But, we just see big sponsors coming on board and putting money towards women in motorsports. And it's every day you just wonder who's going to be next to see that the value that these women are bringing to motorsports. And I love that part of it, obviously, because I'm about the women. So I always say we love the men, but we're all about the women, so we have to keep loving those guys because we need some competition, right? But we also want to have the women connected and celebrated. And that's what I like to do.
Yeah, just have the opportunities. And you mentioned something really important that I've noticed a change too, is the sponsorship and the companies, and they're realizing that their sponsor dollars are going to get as much, if not more value for them.
Yeah.
So it's great to see the financial support coming to everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. Because, I did a lot of research this past winter, about the percentage of women that do this and the percentage of women that buy that and whatever. And we know that women are the largest purchasers of pretty much everything.
Yeah.
And so if these sponsors want to reach the people who purchase green beans at Kroger or the next car for the family, they need to be targeting the women.
Yeah.
Because they basically are making those decisions, and nothing against the men, but it's just how things have evolved. And it's just the fact that that's how it happens. And so I love that. I love that women are being assertive and showing that they have just as much ability and smarts and interest as the men. And so it makes it so much fun to, probably go to these rallies and see more and more women participating.
Yeah. The more diverse the field, the better in my mind.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Amy, how could someone follow you, follow what you're doing, your road racing, that kind of thing? Let us know where we can keep track of you.
So I am on social media. It's at Team Lerner. And then, as I mentioned, one more plug for my One More Win film. The website for that is onemorewinfilm.com, or as I mentioned, it's available now on Amazon and iTunes.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, I encourage everybody to check that out because those kinds of stories are just so uplifting and interesting and so much different than some of the normal things that we can find on Amazon or iTunes. So let's support our fellow road race or rally racer, our woman in motorsports, and check that out. So I'm going to
Thank
check
you.
it out for sure myself.
Thank
So
you.
Amy, I just want to thank you so much for being with me today. This has been really interesting. Like I said, I just learned every time that I get a chance to talk to one of you ladies that the sport that you're in is amazing as far as travel and the things that you have to know and the things that you learn and the experiences you have. And I would love to be able to do that, but my back probably would not take riding in the car. But if they ever do something now, I know the Rebel Rally Rebel Rally is in the United States, right?
Yep.
And it's in like the California Glamis somewhere over
Yeah,
in that area.
California, Nevada, usually, I think.
So that would be the one where I'd want to do the third seat. I could probably handle that.
Shoot them an email. You never know.
Yeah, I may have to do that. Excuse me. I have a bad cough. So, well, I just want to thank you for being with me today, Amy. And I encourage everybody to check out what Amy's doing and her documentary that she did. And just good luck. And I'm going to keep following you and keeping tabs on what you're doing because I really find it interesting.
I appreciate that. And thanks for having me on. It's fantastic talking to you.
Thank you. If you're looking to buy, sell, or trade the stuff that strokes your engine, anything from truck parts to classic and muscle cars, RVs to hot rods, and everything in between, then check out the official classifieds at racingjunk.com. Racingjunk.com is the world's #1 online racing and performance marketplace, the ultimate one-stop shop where you'll find what you need to rock your ride. If it belongs in your garage, it's for sale on racingjunk.com. Log on to racingjunk.com to find the gear you're looking for, sell your extra stuff, keep up on racing news and tech tips, and more. Again, that's racingjunk.com. And tell them Melinda sent you. Thank you for listening to the Racing Girls Rock podcast, brought to you by the Women's Motorsports Network.